Good morning, Marijuana Nation. It's Thursday, June 22nd, 2017, and you're tuned in to episode 274 of Marijuana Today Daily. I'm your host, Shay Gunther, and I'll be walking you through today's marijuana news and headlines. As always, we have a full and busy day of cannabis news in our hands, so let's jump right into it. Our top story of the day brings us to Vermont, where it looks like the hopes for legislatively imposed legal adult use marijuana is, for real this time, dead this lawmaking session. I say that knowing that I've actually said that before about Vermont and legal marijuana this year, but this time, unfortunately, I mean it. Regular listeners know how up and down this story has been, as state lawmakers and Governor Phil Scott have tossed around various incarnations of proposed legalization bills over the past few months. Tom Angel over MassRoots has a great write-up of the whole story and the confluence of events that led up to yesterday, when Republicans in the Vermont State House squashed any hopes for passage of a legalization bill by denying a motion that it be considered on an expedited basis. That's the bad news. The good news is that even when we lose a battle in this war for sane marijuana policy, we move the ball a little closer to the goal line. Passing adult use legalization will be that much easier next year in both Vermont and other states as they look at what was done there this year as a model to build off of. In Massachusetts, state lawmakers were working late into the night last night and passed a proposed measure regulating their adult use marijuana industry. This is another story we've been tracking closely as it's developed, with lawmakers hashing out the details for how the legal adult use system passed by voters in the fall will actually work. Last week, legislative leaders abruptly pulled from consideration a plan that was criticized by in-state marijuana advocates and activists as going against the will of the voters by imposing high taxes and stripping local voters of having a say on local licensing issues. That bill was passed late last night by the Massachusetts State House and raises the tax on adult use sales from the 12% set in the voter initiative to 28%, while also giving the power of banning local marijuana businesses over to town and municipal councils rather than the voters at large. Will Luzier, an activist who worked to pass November's ballot measure, said the House bill is not a good one, telling the AP, quote, "The message it sends is the will of the people be damned." Unquote. The Massachusetts State Senate is set to vote on their own version of a legalization bill later today. That version keeps the tax rate at 12% and allows only local voters the ability to block marijuana businesses from getting licensed in their town. If that measure should pass, a conference committee will form to work out a compromise between the two versions. We'll obviously keep following this one. Our final top story of the day is the news that prominent marijuana activist organization, the Marijuana Policy Project, or MPP as they're better known, is losing their bank account after being a customer of PNC Bank for the last 22 years. They're not switching banks to get a better deal, they're being booted from the bank because of the industry in which they operate in, namely legal marijuana. MPP said that they were informed last month of the impending closing of their account set to take place on July 7th, and that it was due to an internal audit that found that the organization took funding from companies that handle marijuana directly. Banks are notoriously skittish about running afoul of federal finance and banking laws, at least when it comes to extending services to legal marijuana businesses. This is a good story to click over and read in full. As always, we have all the news we cover linked to on our website at mjtodaydaily.com and on our Twitter account at mjtodaydaily. Those are our top stories for today. It's time for Marijuana Today Daily Headlines Blitz. Before we blitz out on headlines, let's quickly thank our sponsor, MJ Today Media, publishers of this podcast, our weekly show Marijuana Today, and the MJ Today Media newsfeed, the most comprehensive source around for all of the day's marijuana news, neatly organized by state. Our ever-growing audience is the best in the business of legal marijuana, and we have the numbers to prove it. Our audience, and by that I mean you, are on average highly educated high earners who are either in the legal marijuana industry or who are actively working to get in. Our listeners trust us to bring them the straight scoop on things, and they take action on and remember our sponsors. Build your brand and drive direct action by sponsoring MJ Today Media. Send an email to advertising@mjtodaymedia.com to get a copy of our ad kit and to lock in today's prices for up to a year. That's advertising@mjtodaymedia.com. All right, time for the Blitz. The headline on Mary Jane's piece says it all. Quote, Ohio Senator Rob Portman is lying about drug dealers lacing marijuana with fentanyl. Unquote. A story has popped up in recent days about the purported practice of adding the deadly painkiller fentanyl to marijuana sold on the illicit market. This decidedly fake story has actually been peddled by Ohio Senator Rob Portman for a while now, who's been shown to be lying about the issue on a number of occasions. Mary Jane does a good job of pulling those examples together and is worthy of a click over and read. A recent study conducted by researchers at Stanford University found that legalizing adult use marijuana sharply reduces the number of vehicle searches conducted by police officers. In Colorado and Washington, both states with legal adult use marijuana, the number of drivers found with any illegal substances fell 40% in the year after legalization. But even as the overall number of searches fell, sadly, and perhaps not surprisingly, the racial disparities involved in who gets searched by police remain, with Black and Hispanic drivers about twice as likely to be searched as white drivers. The state of South Carolina is working to enact a system that will allow its farmers to grow and sell industrial hemp. The state's Department of Agriculture is drafting a set of rules and regulations for how farmers will be able to grow and sell hemp after a bill was passed in May mandating that it do so. The department has until July 1st to get the first set of rules into place, after which 20 South Carolina farmers will be given license to grow up to 20 acres of hemp each. After that, the department will set the number of farmers and the number of acres allowed to be grown based on demand and the program's overall performance. Hawaiian state officials have approved the licensing of 2 more medical marijuana cultivation and processing centers, clearing the way for them to start growing marijuana. Manoa Botanicals and Green Aloha Limited both were given the okay to start yesterday and will be able to grow up to 3,000 plants each at their respective facilities. State officials just need to finalize licensing for testing facilities before dispensaries can start dispensing medical marijuana. Yesterday, 2 members of Philadelphia's City Council released statements expressing their disappointment that no Philadelphia-based companies were among the first 12 announced winners of the state's coveted medical marijuana cultivation licenses. Council members Derek Green and Bobby Henson criticized the decision that left out Philadelphia winners while handing permits to 2 applicants from the same county. Councilman Green told the Philly Voice, quote, "We hope that the state will show more consideration to Philadelphia during the next round of decisions regarding these licenses. Considering that medical marijuana is projected to be a multi-billion-dollar industry in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia should not have been left out of this initial opportunity to develop jobs and grow local and diverse companies." Unquote. We turn to Kentucky for this one, where yesterday during a hearing held by a state legislative committee, a state senator spoke strongly in favor of legalizing medical marijuana by terminally ill people. State Senator Morgan McGarvey testified before a joint House and Senate Health and Welfare Committee meeting yesterday and pushed for the serious consideration of the legalization of medical marijuana, saying, quote, "It's 2017. I think it's time we had a conversation about medical marijuana without snickering," unquote. Although it's unlikely that the Kentucky legislature will actually do anything about medical marijuana this year, it is heartening that, as the Courier-Journal is reporting, no lawmakers spoke out against the idea of medical marijuana. Baby steps. Our final story of the day is the $420,000 given out by Pueblo County, Colorado to newly graduated high school seniors heading off to college in the fall. The scholarship fund was paid for entirely through the use of a wholesale marijuana excise tax, with 210 students each getting $2,000 for school next year. Right now, that excise tax is set at 2%, but it's bound to increase by 1% a year until it hits 5%. So Pueblo County students should look forward to many, many years of marijuana-enabled education ahead of them. Won't somebody think of the children, like Pueblo County does? And for the record, the fact that the total amount given out was $420,000 was a complete and total coincidence. I'm having a hard time believing that one. Those are the headlines and news for the day. I'll be back with you again tomorrow morning with another information-packed episode of Marijuana Today Daily. But in the meantime, if you have any stories to share or feedback to give, zip us an email to headlines@mjtodaydaily.com. And while you're clicking around the interwebs, swing over to our Twitter account at MJTodayDaily and visit our website at mjtodaydaily.com to find links to all the news we cover. Thanks to our sponsor, MJ Today Media, and to all of our awesome Patreon listeners for the support that makes this show possible. To join the illustrious ranks of the Patreon listeners yourself, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com and click on that big blue button at the top of the page that says Become a Patron. I'm your host, Shay Gunther. Thanks for tuning in and starting your day with Marijuana Today.
One take, Shay. One take.